John Colt, contemporary painter and craftsman, selects his materials with care. His painting techniques are centuries old, with but one exception. Colt is a careful, meticulous painter, often spending months of daily work on a single painting. Colt paints on linen canvas, the time-honored traditional painting surface. He selects his canvas with an eye for quality of construction and a particular texture. The texture or tooth of the canvas will play an important part in the finished painting. For this painting, John Colt has chosen medium rough Belgium linen. Colt uses commercial stretcher bars. These have mitered corners with tongue and groove joints. The bars also have a provision for spreading the joints with wedges if desired. The bars are beveled on the inside edges. Thus the canvas will touch only the outside margin. All these features make the machine-made stretcher bars superior to most homemade devices. Colt makes certain that his stretcher bars are straight and made of well-seasoned wood. The unit is assembled carefully. The tongues of the bars are easily broken, so care must be taken when forcing them into the grooves. The unit must be square, so that the weave of the canvas will not be distorted. Then, too, an off-square bar assembly makes proper framing virtually impossible. After laying out the canvas, the completed stretcher bar assembly is placed in position. It is adjusted so that the bars are parallel with the weave. The canvas is trimmed with care taken to leave enough for a handhold for the actual stretching of the material. If necessary, excess canvas can be trimmed off after stretching and tacking. Historical use of canvas as a painting support can be traced back well before the time of the Renaissance. Among other reasons, John Colt likes the feel of the canvas under the brush, but more especially, it is its textural visual quality that he values most. Tacking begins at the center of one of the side bars. First on one side, and then the other. The canvas is stretched firmly, but not severely. The canvas is stretched from the center to the corners and secured. The artist is careful to be consistent in this operation, for uneven stress at any one point would create distortion in the weave. This would not bother artists who apply paint thickly, thus hiding the canvas, but Colt works by applying extremely thin layers, allowing the texture of the weave to be seen. Regular spacing of the tacks also helps in avoiding this problem of uneven tension. A poorly stretched canvas would cause uneven movement under the paint as it ages and create cracks in the surface. The corner is folded and pulled tight in the last bit of stretching. This neat, smooth corner will present no problem when it comes time to frame the painting. If the canvas is stretched properly at this point, use of wedges is unnecessary. Actually, the corner wedges are provided to take up slack as the painting stretches through the years. Colt adds cross braces. He makes these himself whenever he paints this size or larger. The function of these braces is to prevent torquing or warping of the stretched unit. These braces also keep the longitudinal bars from bowing in. All this is quite necessary since the canvas will shrink when later sized. Colt secures the bars with small brads. The end result of this effort gives Colt a canvas which is firmly stretched, tight but not drum tight. Craftsmen for generations have used rabbit skin glue for sizing. This is a commercial product made from the clippings of rabbit skins. Colt is careful to use rabbit skin glue in preference to bone and fish glues. The bone glue contains acids which would cause the fabric to deteriorate. Fish glue is characteristically hygroscopic and therefore unsuitable. Colt melts his glue in a double boiler and applies it as it begins to cool and congeal. If applied too hot, too liquefied, it would saturate the canvas and cause excessive shrinking. Then, too, a thick application would hide the texture of the canvas. The function of the glue size is to seal the top side of the canvas to isolate it from damaging chemicals in paint compounds. The glue also stabilizes the canvas and presents a sympathetic surface for the ground or foundation coat. 2 or 3 days will assure complete drying of the prime coat. The canvas will then be ready for the application of the ground. The first pigment layer or foundation coat is called the ground. Colt uses a traditional ground pigment, white lead. The Flemish painters used white lead in grounds in the 14th century. White lead forms a hard, permanent surface, yet is more elastic than its popular counterpart, gesso. The white lead, which is suspended in linseed oil, is cut with turpentine to thin it just enough to be moved with a brush. Excessive turpentine would weaken the ground and cause it to be porous and absorbent. The mixture is tacky when applied, leaving a texture which will hold the paint. The white lead ground must be allowed to dry for several days to make certain the linseed oil vehicle is hard. Colors will shine on this carefully prepared flat white canvas. I generally find the seed for my paintings in small thumbnail sketches, often done with a ballpoint pen. This sort of shorthand is a valuable note-taking device when gathering ideas from nature. Sometimes, however, I start with a finished ink or chalk drawing. The idea for this painting came from several pen and ink sketches which led to a red chalk drawing. My paintings begin relatively thin, extreme in color, extreme in value contrast, and extreme in spontaneous brushwork. I like to feel that I have the full canvas at my command right from the beginning. The organization begins with the very first brushstrokes, for this is where the structure and character of the painting forms. By and large, turpentine is the only vehicle that I use. Turpentine washes at first, later just enough added to the pigment to make it brush in a certain manner. At times I use lucite dissolved in turpentine. It is an acrylic resin which adds a tackiness to the paint and dries very quickly with a matte finish. In the early stages, I work with large bristle brushes, working swiftly and nervously. I believe in the spontaneous, quick, intuitive beginnings. Later stages in the work involve honing and polishing. Paradoxically, I suppose, I try to keep the painting free and spontaneous, and at the same time maintain overall control. What am I communicating to people? I am awed by nature. My ideas are transformed to paint and canvas. Not literally, but conceived in color and shape and rendered as convincingly as I technically know how. Obviously, when a personal vision is so subjective, the audience is limited. My audience is very small, but there is an audience. My palette is a simple one, a piece of glass over white paper. It is all I need. I shape and reshape, eliminate, sift, until I am finally left with a combination of form and color that best expresses my idea. Where do my ideas come from? Again, nature. through close observation of minute biomorphic forms of wood and meadow. I am particularly drawn to brute, bizarre objects, not necessarily beautiful, but rich and vital. For example, stumps, weeds, stones and bones, insects and bogs. I am always amazed by forms reappearing in seemingly unassociated facets of nature. Similar structures and motifs in shell, animal, vegetable, cloud, and flower. This painting is a departure from a stump, plant forms that extend downward to the roots so that both ends of the various shapes can logically be ornate. The relationship of the size of the nature forms to the size of the canvas puts the structure of the painting closer to still life than the usual concept of the landscape. Is my work influenced by immediate events such as war, politics, and science? Certainly. The tempo of the times influences all artists, some more obviously than others. Actually, major events influence all society, but the artist records the feeling of an era graphically. War has been an important factor in my life. Consequently, it affects my paintings. Politics only on a grand scale influence my work. Science is the most powerful influence of our times. What goes on in my mind when I step back from the painting? I try to look at it with fresh eyes, try to grab an objective look. I may look at the painting from a strange angle, or upside down, or from a great distance in a long hallway, or pop into a dark room and flip on the light so that the painting registers immediately, or look at it in a mirror. These methods all aid in trying to see objectively. The pacing and looking while I am actually painting is a form of this activity, though not as extreme. Looking is an intricate part of the painting process. Why do I refer to the drawing from time to time? The red chalk drawing is complete in itself, not a sketch for the painting, and the painting is another form created with other materials. The painting is not a copy of the drawing, but was suggested by the drawing. So when my painting becomes indecisive, or for one reason or another I do not know where to move, I then refer to the drawing to see what underlying structure or bigness or simplification made it come off, whereas the painting has not yet arrived. My attack slows in pace and becomes more deliberate. As the work progresses, less brushwork and more contemplative study of relationships, many times hours, days, and weeks between brushstrokes. Technique, too, becomes more involved as the painting moves on. It is an attempt to preserve the immediate freshness, but at the same time build a paint surface that carries the forms in the most convincing manner that I can conjure. In late stages, I am involved in the subtleties of tone, color, and texture. Actually, my method of painting is a traditional one, in the fact that I keep my darks relatively thin and translucent, and the light areas opaque, more impasto. However, I never lose the weave of the canvas, and the slight irregularity of the linen canvas becomes an intricate part of the tactile quality of the painting. Have I been influenced by painters of other times? Yes. The painters in art history that have most profoundly influenced me include those that most successfully welded form and emotional content. Giants such as Goya, Rouault, Rembrandt, and Orozco. Clay and Miro, too, have made me greatly aware of inventive forms with the human being and nature as fathomless sources of inspiration. What is my value as a painter to modern society? I often ask myself this question. However, in all epochs, the artist has been an important aspect of his times and most certainly indicates the tempo. In this time, when society has become cellophane-wrapped, moved by push-button control, The artist is to some degree a bridge to nature, a contact with humanity. Why am I a painter and not a writer or merchant? Partly environment, I suppose. My father is a painter. It has been my intense goal for as long as I can remember. A person who is bound to a life of creativity seeks out a media with which he can relate most fluently. It may be a horn, a pen, a camera, a torch. Mine is a brush. My painting is nearly complete. A few more brush strokes and it's done. Now I can relax and study my work. How do I think my work will stand the test of time? Who can say? I am very aware, of course, that time is the great judge, and it can be brutal. As fads and fashions change, so do isms in all fields, no less painting. And really what changes in painting is the point of emphasis. Now structure, then content, now technique, then literal, and so the mode changes. The paintings throughout art history which have stayed, which still belong, have contained all these aspects to some degree, but never sacrificed form. So that a Giotto or Goya is true for any faction that is looking at it in any art epoch. Paintings cannot be identified with an obvious school. They don't fit the neat niche. They don't mark a distinct era, nor are they experimentally avant-garde, thus they do not become a touchstone. But again, who can say how my paintings will stand the test of time?